Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. For some strange reason, the previous episode I made regarding objections that I received uh, became very popular, so it viralized, and as a consequence, I thought of doing a sequel. So, because the list that this commentator of mine sent me is pretty long, I can address several of his objections, and let's see how it goes. So, in the first episode, I treated the preamble and objection number 1. Now, objection number 2. The US and the CIA, I'm translating from Romanian now, had bases in Ukraine after 2014, after the Russians took Crimea, as a consequence of the fact that Yanukovych fell because he pivoted towards EU ascension. No, he pivoted away from EU accession to Moscow, because Moscow enforced trade sanctions and put pressure on the Ukrainian economy. So therefore, the CIA and the United States were honoring the promise they had made in the Minsk agreements. Well, that's a lot to unpack. So, first of all, the CIA and the United States essentially was not involved in the Minsk agreements. The Minsk agreements were two agreements concluded between I think the central government of Ukraine and the two breakaway republics of Lugansk and Donetsk, and Russia. I'm not sure if the two republics were parties as well, but France and Germany were the guarantors, and the United States was not involved. So the United States was not a party to the Minsk agreements. This is why the Russian leadership, ever since 2022, scolded continuously the leaderships of Germany and France, because they were guarantors that lacked goodwill. So both Angela Merkel and François Hollande admitted that when they brokered the Minsk agreements, they did not do it in good faith. This is why Russia was very pissed off at Germany and France for allowing the war to happen, for allowing Ukraine not to implement the Minsk Accords. And therefore, the United States was never involved in the Minsk Accords. It was not a guarantor to the Minsk Accords, and therefore it had no business to put troops and bases and CIA assets in Ukraine after 2014. This is not a legitimate reason. Therefore, the thing with the EU accession and Yanukovych's pivot, actually what happened was that Ukraine was integrated in this free trade area together with Russia. I think it is the Eurasian European Union, and together with Armenia and several countries from the Commonwealth of Independent States. And starting accession negotiations with the European Union involved exiting from the common Eurasian market, so from the Eurasian Economic Union. So this implied that several industries, quite a lot of them from the Ukrainian economy, would face losses that could not be offset against obtaining free trade status with the European Union. As a consequence of this, there was this net loss, and Yanukovych approached the European Union to ask if it is in any way possible to receive aid for this loss. And the European Union said no, because it would be too costly. Of course, it's orders of magnitude less costly than what the war actually entails. But yeah, in, 2013, Yanukovych basically had to collapse the Ukrainian economy had he gone further with EU accession at that point, because the Ukrainian economy would have collapsed, and therefore pivoted back to Moscow and to the Eurasian Economic Union. This pivoting away when you're an economy that's highly dependent on Eurasia, both in terms of inputs like energy and in terms of outputs, this is where you sell your industrial products, is very hard to do. And the European Union should have extended some perhaps loan agreements, but better yet grants to offset these losses so as to entice the Ukrainian economy to move towards integrating with Europe, with the European Union. But it didn't. And this is what sparked subsequently the protests and, well, the whole coup d'etat. This is pretty much known. And the fact that the United States placed CIA bases in Ukraine as early as 2014 was admitted in a New York Times article. So it's not something from the Russian propaganda, it's from the American propaganda, if we can trust the New York Times. Let's see if the... Yeah, maybe this is... the light is better this way. Yeah. What are your arguments when you say that Romania will be Ukraine's support for the war? The entire political elite knows the opinion of the common citizen that loves his country but would run away in the second should he be conscripted. Plus, we don't have good enough military supplies. How are we going to enter the war? With what? We are a people of cowards. Our doctrine is bowing the head, and the sword shall not chop it off. How do you imagine that the leaders would be different? Would we have bigger balls than the Balts and little Moldova? Well, there's also a lot to unpack here. So I'm saying that Romania will be Ukraine's support for the war because we have all of these integration processes going on in the Odessa Triangle, also involving Moldova. And there are these mechanisms put in place that do not take into account the will of the people. The will of the people can be expressed democratically once every 4 years if they understand what they are voting for, if they understand the topic, and if they understand what is at stake. But it was not the case in Romania. So any country in Romania's position, so close to the war and with the credible indications that it could be drawn into the war, should have voted having as prime campaign topic this: how not to enter the war. Unfortunately, Romania went to the polls in 2024 and 2025 with a completely different idea. The idea was to defeat fascism, not fascism in Ukraine, to defeat fascism in Romania, meaning to defeat the sovereigntist movement, which wanted to preclude a dangerous involvement of Romania into the war. So, for example, Călin Georgescu was disqualified, his first round victory was annulled, and he was subsequently barred from running. In my opinion, first and foremost, because he said he would cut aid to Ukraine. Cutting aid to Ukraine involves more than just cutting the Romanian aid to Ukraine. Cutting aid to Ukraine involves taking the Romanian piece of puzzle from the logistic network that supplies Ukraine. And the Romanian piece of puzzle is essential now. The Polish piece of puzzle dwindled in importance. The Slovak and the Hungarian ones are too small to matter, and their position is also not very conducive for large-scale shipments. And Romania is essential as a transportation node. So had Georgescu won the elections, or perhaps even Simion, we don't know, Romania would have extracted itself from this war. And this is what the electorate fought to prevent. There was this large mobilization to prevent the ascent of a sovereigntist president that would take Romania out of the war. And in the parliamentary elections to prevent a majority of the sovereigntist parties. And the Romanian electorate managed to fulfill its wish The sovereigntist forces are in opposition and they have no say over the developments. And we have 4 years of these mechanisms being put in place. These mechanisms of further and further integration, also pieces of legislation passed, like, for example, the one with the Romanian army being under French command on the territory of Romania, so being under NATO command, but in the case of Romania, NATO command is French, and expanding the prerogatives of the French command to include repressing public or political disturbances. So some sort of policing, military policing on the territory of Romania, even though it's a foreign army. This other piece of legislation regarding authorizing military interventions in defense of Romanian citizens abroad. So essentially allowing for the deployment of the Romanian army in places pertaining to the Odessa Triangle, be it in the Republic of Moldova or in the Odessa region of Ukraine. And of course, all the infrastructure work that's done, the interconnectivity, everything that's done to integrate Moldova, Romania, and the Odessa region. So there are a lot of indications, a lot of indications. Of course, it is not announced officially, but if you read through the lines, and why would I say that Romania would be Ukraine's support? Well, first of all, because Ukraine would definitely want it. Who wouldn't in Ukraine's position? And second of all, because Ukraine can actually obtain it. So it's not only NATO and the European Union that are, let's say, putting in place these mechanisms to feed Romania into the war, but Ukraine is actively pulling through creating all sorts of incidents, security incidents, and through creating this network inside Romania of people who spread its point of view and spread its narrative as being the official one and the absolute truth. So not being perceived as Ukrainian propaganda or the Ukrainian point of view, but rather the objective path that Romania should take, even though it comes from Ukraine, even though it is something that Ukraine suggests. So conflating resisting Ukraine in the for the sake of national interest with treason towards Russia. This is their main goal, and I think they succeeded quite well in this. And how do I know that Ukraine wants it? Well, I mean, why wouldn't it? Who wouldn't want it in Ukraine's position? Ukraine would, of course, want to involve NATO, to involve European troops, to get a neighbor involved into the conflict, because this is what increases the resistance on its side of the front. This is what decreases the pace of the Russian conquest of Ukrainian territory, and it gives it a better chance of winning, or I don't know, it slows down its losses, or there are many reasons why you would want to use another country's resources, including its human resources, for your own goals, especially military goals. So, and this is Ukraine's best strategy. This is out of all the strategies that Ukraine can employ, this strategy of capturing Romania is the one that has the highest chances of succeeding, because Romania has these weak elites and these treacherous, I would say, elites that never think of the national interest, that are very, very easy to seduce, be it materially, like with money, or morally, with feelings and narratives, onto a foreign cause. This was the nature of the Romanian elites since time immemorial, since history began being written in these lands. There was always a foreign party that the Romanian elites served, and now it is no different. So why wouldn't Ukraine go for this? In my opinion, it's their dominant strategy. If I were the leader of Ukraine, I would do exactly the same. This is what benefits my country. This is what advances the national interest of my people. So why wouldn't I go for it? Romania is a very easy prey given the fact that it has deprofessionalized its political class in the past decades, and it has basically alienated its elites. Its elites were never patriotic to a large extent, but what is now is the complete opposite. So basically, they take pride in the fact that they are unpatriotic and that they do not support the national cause and that they support foreign interests. It's a matter of pride and of prestige. So, yeah, why wouldn't Ukraine capture Romania if it can? And regarding the opinion of the people, well, sure, yeah, the political elite knows that the population would not be very eager to go to war. No population is eager to go to war. It's not like the Germans in the Second World War were eager to go to war. No. This is why Goebbels explained in the Nuremberg trials how population needs to be engineered, how public opinion needs to be steered towards war, to have war as the only alternative, to denounce the peacemakers as traitors, and so on. No population wants to go to war, but there are these mechanisms which are being put in place so as to engineer consent. Like Chomsky used to put it while he was flying on Epstein Island, manufacturing consent. And this is what the elites have to do with respect to the population. In Ukraine, people don't want to fight. Of course, in Romania, the people who read the media get this distorted view that somehow the Ukrainians fight out of their own volition, instead of receiving the actual news that they are bussified, they're taken from the streets like stray dogs with lassos and put into vans, beaten up, and then sent to the front lines. They do not get this piece of news. They receive only the propaganda, the fact that they can't wait to go on the front lines and to fight this horde, to fight the Mongol horde and so on, and to bravely defeat it as it is doing. So in my opinion, unfortunately, the population has no stake in it. The population, the regular people, the fact that they don't want to fight doesn't play a role in the equation. It's not a variable to the equation, because the only thing that they can do after they voted, so in my opinion, that was the last thing they could do, vote. If they understood the problem, they could vote accordingly. They didn't. Okay, so they'll have the next chance of voting. Maybe how things are evolving does not make me too optimistic regarding this, because now we will have a government that represents nobody from a political point of view, and this is the kind of democratic decay that also happened in the final years of the 1930s in Romania. So I can see the parallels. But let's say that elections will be held in 2028. I doubt that political contestants will be allowed that want to deviate from this path. In Ukraine, they're not allowed. In Moldova, they're not allowed. I'm pretty sure they will not be allowed in the third country of the Odessa Triangle, namely Romania. So I think the last moment when this outcome could have been changed was in 2024 and in 2025. It did not change, so then from that point onwards, solutions become individual. Who doesn't want to serve has to make contingency plans to avoid it. And Romania does not have the necessary equipment to fight. Well, it doesn't need it. First of all, Ukraine is doing pretty good in receiving weapons. What Ukraine is lacking is people. So as long as Romania can provide the manpower, I'm pretty sure that Western governments, the Western budgets could be milked further to give these resources to the weapons manufacturers, so as proper weapons can be sent to the belligerent parties. In that case, not only Ukraine, but Ukraine and Romania as well. I don't think that would be the problem. I think Romania would become a solution in terms of manpower, in terms of plugging the holes in the Ukrainian defense with Romanian infantry. And they don't need to be very brave. They don't need to be very skilled. They just need to be. And I'm sure the Ukrainians will find some suitable tasks to give them, maybe in the rear, or I don't know, or maybe in the front lines. We are a people of cowards, says my objector. Yes, but so were we in 1941, right, when we took part in Operation Barbarossa. The national character did not change, and we went all the way to the Volga River. The Volga is very close to the edge of Europe, so very close to the Ural Mountains, where geographically Europe ends. So we went quite a long way, I must say, even though we are people of cowards, because war has a different mechanism. It is not based on volition, it is not based on courage, it is based on orders. And once conscription happens, the conscription officer doesn't ask you if you want it, if you're brave. It's not about this. Just like in 1941, all those millions that were conscripted, millions of Romanians that were conscripted and that were sent to the front on both sides, could not escape their fate, could not evade this. I'm pretty sure that it cannot be evaded also in the 21st century, irrespective of what people feel in their souls regarding this. So would our leaders have bigger balls than the Balts or little Moldova? Well, no, our leaders don't need to have bigger balls. Our leaders need to have no balls at all, and I think they're doing a pretty good job at it so far. Our leaders just need to take orders. This is the chain of command. Our leaders need to take orders from their higher-ups. In that case, NATO or Ukraine, well, they don't need to be brave themselves. They just need to follow orders, respect the chain of command, do what they're told, and pass the orders down further to the population. Another objection. Our kind president refuses the nuclear umbrella of France. It still bets on the strategic partner, the United States, which turns their back on us on every occasion. If the European Union wants to go to war, then why is Mr. President no longer pro-EU but pro-Western? Do you think this is still an indication that we are being pushed into the war? Well, I think that this whole thing with France's nuclear umbrella was kind of a confusing situation. France is perhaps trying to fill in the gap that the United States might create in the European defense by withdrawing from the continent. But it was probably not a serious offer, so it's not like it's not exactly something that you can decide from one day to the next, because being under France's nuclear umbrella entails more things than meet the eye. Probably French nuclear weapons would have to be stationed in Romania. This is part of the deal, so that would put Romania on the front line, on the nuclear front line, and it would perhaps make it vulnerable in the sense that it might be considered a target. So Russia might want to preempt an attack on Romania, might preempt with an attack on Romania the setting up of these nuclear weapons. It's a complicated issue. I don't know exactly what Romania's defense strategy is regarding the nuclear umbrella, either the one of France or the one of the United States. It's I'm not privy to any confidential information. These things have not been made public. The calculations that the Romanian military establishment are making. So I don't really know what the situation with it is. I don't think the EU wants to go to war with Russia any more than the US wants to go to war. The thing is, the EU is just caught in its own logic. The EU is caught in this parade of exhibiting virtue, and it doesn't really consider war a realistic outcome. it's somehow making these war plans for defense, for a potential future attack of Russia, to preempt it. But the EU is not really considering invading Russia. It's not really considering sending troops to Ukraine. It is rather done on a voluntary basis. This is why we have the coalition of the willing, and even they are a bit wary. Perhaps they wanted to intimidate Russia, but they are also wary of sending troops. The only serious initiative comes from France, and is the setting up of this Odessa Triangle, of which Romania is a part. This is the more serious commitment. France said that it would send troops to Odessa should it be in danger of being captured by Russia. I don't think the president is switching allegiances between the EU and the United States. I think the Romanian president, just like the rest of our elites, are fully pro-American and fully pro-European, and they have not made up their mind regarding who to go with, the European Federalists or the United States. Even the European Federalists themselves used to appreciate the umbrella that the United States is providing in terms of security, and they themselves don't exactly know. Everything is very fluid right now, so I don't think any decisions have been made. If US are the ones that are sending us to war, why is Mr. Bolojan, the previous prime minister, well, the interim prime minister, pushing back on NuScale? NuScale, this project of modular small reactors. Basically, they're trying to adapt submarine nuclear reactors to civilian use, and it's an experimental technology. It's like hydrogen trains, but somehow our elites are very fond of experimental technologies for which there is no minimum viable product, no demonstrable benefit. And Bolojan is pushing back on a NuScale because it's a scam. It's just it's something that doesn't work, that produces energy at too high costs. It entails risks that are unknown. So such mini modular power plants have never been built, and therefore it is unaccessible. The risk that such a new type of nuclear power plant entails cannot be assessed. It should be experimented somewhere, but not in Romania, in my opinion, my humble opinion. But for some reason, Romania, because our elites are so great, my former high school colleague was the energy minister, and he proposed this project that subsequently was approved, and that made Romania the testing ground for an experimental nuclear technology. After the experimental vaccine with RNA, with a messenger RNA technology that had never been inserted into humans until the clinical trials for Pfizer and Moderna, we were to be again testing grounds for another experimental American technology, because this is the condition, this is the role that colonies play. If you're a colony, if you're so low on the pecking order, they will just experiment stuff on you because that's your value. This is the value that you bring to the system. Yeah, there are many objections, so I think I'm gonna stop here. Maybe I'm gonna do another episode. Maybe I'll just address the one about Shoshaka. So Shoshaka went to Russia today to uphold the cause of Romania's only enemy. Is that okay with you? Well, I'm not sure if Russia is Romania's only enemy. I'm not sure if Russia is Romania's enemy. I am open to the idea that it might be. So I've thought about it, and actually people who say that Russia is the structural enemy of Romania are not exactly wrong. Romania was created as a plug in 1859 to stop the Russian march towards the Balkans, and conjunction of the Eastern Slavs with the Southern Slavs and the subsequent take of Constantinople. So Romania is kind of in the way. So if Russia were to reignite its plans to bridge towards the Southern Slavs, I could say that I could agree with somebody that says that Romania is somehow a structural enemy of Russia. Romania in the sense of Romanian statehood. So I could see Russia encouraging a project like Greater Moldova, like some sort of fragmentation of Romania, just to make compatible some statelets with the, I don't know, Russian, Eastern Slavic, or Pan-Slavic imperial vision. I can see that, and if somebody wants to argue on that line, I'm open to it. So I don't think this is a good enough reason to commit suicide by entering into war against Russia. I think certain suicide is worse than potential imperialist plans that would come further down the line, but that's just me. And in terms of speaking to Russian media, what Shoshaka did and what Shoshaka did these days, that she went to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and addressed Putin. Well, as long as people go to the United States, they don't speak to Trump, so nobody had this honor from the Romanian political class yet. But as long as people go and speak to the American authorities, why not speak to the Russian ones as well? If people go on American media to express their point of view, why not on the Russian one? Why not on the Iranian one? I do not consider that stifling speech is a good idea. I do not consider that blocking the points of view of geopolitical rivals is a good idea. I don't think that Russian, Chinese, Venezuelan, Cuban, Iranian, North Korean, whatever televisions should be boycotted. I think that Romanian politicians should talk to whichever news outlet they feel like, and in general, Romanian citizens should have the right to receive information from any news outlet they prefer. Unlike is the situation now in the whole of the European Union, that some Russian news outlets are banned. So, for example, you cannot access RIA Novosti without a VPN, but you can access TASS without a VPN. I have no idea what sense that makes, but this is what it is. So I've rambled for quite some time. I have a lot of objections here, so I will address them in subsequent videos. Thanks a lot for tuning in. You know what to do if you like what I do. Like, share, subscribe. If you want to support me financially, you'll find the link in the channel description. And until next time, take care.